United States launched a trade war against Canada.
But very importantly, tomorrow tariffs 25% on Canada and 25% on Mexico.
The U.S. tariffs came into effect in the early hours of this morning, and so did the Canadian response.
What they have to do is build their car plants, frankly, and other things in the United States, in which case they have no tariffs.
Canada will be implementing 25% tariffs against $155 billion worth of American goods.
China now saying that they will look to impose tariffs on some U.S. goods as well.
Canadians are reasonable, and we are polite, but we will not back down from a fight.
Now on today's show we're talking tariffs, and that's a word that's been thrown around lately that scares a lot of people. But we're going to focus specifically today on how tariffs can impact the industry, but more importantly you as a home gardener or a consumer. We will discuss where the prices are likely to go, which sectors will be hit the hardest, and whether this is a short-term pain for long-term gain type situation, because a lot of researchers in the industry are actually saying that while this may present short-term challenges, we can actually come out better in the long run with a more domestic focused industry and a more resilient industry. So we're going to dig into that today and make sense of all of this. Now before we get into any of that, we just want to let you guys know we're trying to have a civilized conversation about this. No name calling in the comments. Let's all talk about this like adults and try to figure out exactly what's going to happen and the impact that these tariffs will have on our community. Now, with President Trump returning to the White House, his tariff policies have already begun to send ripples throughout numerous American industries, including the still emerging canna industry. The Trump administration has already imposed tariffs on places like China, Mexico, Canada, India, and a ton of other places. Now, while the good herb is still federally prohibited, the industry still relies on a lot of stuff that's not domestically available. Some of these things actually range from cultivation equipment, vaporization hardware, packaging materials, and a whole lot more. Now, while it cannot be denied that tariffs are a useful tool for international negotiation between countries, it's also important to note that a lot of times prices can increase because of these tariffs, and it may be passed on to the consumer. Now that may lead to short-term pain as prices may temporarily increase, but down the line a lot more manufacturing may happen locally, and in that sense you may get relief lower down the line. Now just a quick reminder guys, if you're getting value from this video, please do like, share, and subscribe to the channel, and if you want to support us further, join the ICANN VIP Bean Club or cop some merch from the merch store. Now according to this article over on International High Life, there are pieces of key equipment that's already facing price hikes, things like LED grow lights. I know that's important for a lot of people. This is also essential for cultivation, and most commercial LED fixtures include components that are manufactured in China. Now there are some great LED manufacturers which are operating out of the US, but a lot of those parts that they use they may source from outside of the US. Now as home gardeners, a lot of you guys may have your equipment already, but if you're looking to upgrade, this is something that you may just need to keep in mind. Now aside from things like LED lights and carbon filters, mediums like peat moss, cocoa, pro-mix, and other types of potting mixes may also be affected, as some of these mediums include ingredients like Canadian peat moss and other types of imported amendments. Now according to this article, the vaporizing industry is also bracing for a major disruption, and this is probably the sector that's going to be hit the hardest. An estimated 90% of the vaporizing hardware is manufactured in China, and this includes cartridges, batteries, and other crucial components. Think of things like your rechargeable pens or even these little cartridges. According to this article, the vaporization supply chain is almost entirely dependent on Chinese manufacturing. And this is coming from Sarah Chen, CEO of VapeTech Solutions. Even products that claim to be American-made often contain components originally manufactured in China, and these tariffs could effectively double the cost of hardware overnight. Now what this will mean is higher prices at the dispos for consumers, and for businesses it prevents difficult decisions about absorbing the cost or passing them on to already price-sensitive consumers. Now you guys know home gardeners are already getting blamed for the declining legal markets and the reason that less people are hitting the dispo, when we all know the real reason is overtaxation, overregulation, and high prices. So all something like this may do is push more people to become home gardeners. Now packaging costs are also set to climb, and in particular those child-resistant options which are required by certain state regulations. A lot of companies source these raw materials and finished packaging products from China. According to Michael Rodriguez, the founder of Green Package Solutions, canna businesses are already navigating complex packaging regulations that vary state by state. these tariffs will force many operators to either absorb significant costs or find domestic alternatives that may not exist at scale. Now, tied to the vaporization hardware is some of that extraction equipment. A lot of these machines used to create concentrates and oils are often containing Chinese manufactured parts. And on the note of vaporization and those parts that come from China, a lot of medical patients actually use a lot of vaporization technologies. As is evident here, med patients who already struggle with the high cost of their medication, a lot of them rely on specific delivery methods like vaporization. And according to Dr. Maria Hernandez, medical director at Capital Compassionate Care, if hardware costs increase substantially, we could see patients forced to choose between less effective delivery methods or taking on additional financial burdens. So it does seem that some of these tariffs can cause a big shakeup in our industry. Is it 100% guaranteed? We'll have to wait to see. But what it does present is potential opportunities for domestic manufacturing. Now, while the immediate outlook appears challenging, some industry analysts see potential silver linings. The tariffs can accelerate domestic manufacturing in the canna industry, and that can create American jobs and reduce long-term dependence on overseas supply chains. Now, you guys would have seen during the COVID pandemic, things were absolutely crazy when it came to supply chains, when it came to automobiles, special chips that go into cars. It was just an absolutely crazy time, so having less dependence on international supply chains may not be a bad thing. According to this, several equipment manufacturers have already announced plans to expand US operations, and Jason Moss, operations director at Canagrow Technologies, says we've been exploring US manufacturing options for several years. The economics have not made sense until now. These tariffs could be the tipping point that makes domestic production viable. So you gotta ask yourself, are we in the middle of a transformation of the industry? Are we finally seeing some long-term industry transformation that's good for the community? Now, beyond the immediate economic and financial impacts, these tariffs could actually accelerate several transformative trends within the industry. Things like consolidation. Smaller operators with less capital to absorb cost increases may be forced to sell to larger companies, accelerating industry consolidation. Whether that's good or bad, I'll leave you guys to discuss that. Innovation. Higher costs for traditional equipment could drive innovation in alternative growth methods and extraction technologies. Also, sustainability. Domestic manufacturing could reduce carbon footprints associated with global shipping while encouraging more sustainable practices. And also regulatory changes. Industry groups may leverage the economic impact to push for federal reforms that would provide more stability and access to traditional business services. Now, we're going to find out what the general response seems to be to this and what people are saying in comment sections and so forth, but I want to find out what you guys think. Drop it in the comments and let me know if this is something that you guys are worried about, or if you guys don't mind short-term pain for long-term gain. Now, having a look at some of the comments on this Facebook post by International High Life, just to see what people are saying about this whole thing. We can see Isabel says false, we grow them in the US, so dumb. Jason says dispensary ripoff anyways, that's why I grow my own homegrown, says Ray. Lexi says that's fine, it was bound to go up eventually, the only reason it's so cheap is because they're trying to push the small guys out of the industry. Angela says Americans did this and the next step is dictatorship. Sarah says good thing I got a guy, I don't go to dispensaries anyway, not to mention I live in New York, so we got reservations. Troy says how? Flower is grown in the US, the equipment is already bought, plenty of new and used equipment to be bought as well. If you need some equipment, give him a call. There are a lot of people with a lot of differing views on this. You know, some people say now he's crossed the line. Harley says good, I'm glad it ain't legal in my state anyways, plus the black market bud is better. Melanie says read deeper as to why and then you may think wiser. We will suffer a bit, but we will get better. Please be smart. So a lot of people have differing views when it comes to this whole thing, but I want to find out what you guys think. Drop it in the comments down below and let me know. Now, to combat some of these tariffs, some companies have been doing things like strategic stockpiling, purchasing 6 to 12 months of supplies of equipment and components ahead of the tariffs actually coming into play. Other companies are doing supply chain diversification, exploring alternative manufacturing in companies that are not subject to some of these tariffs. Others are doing vertical integration, bringing processes in-house. Some people are doing materials substitution, so substituting materials that you need to import with ones that can be sourced domestically, and other people are revising their pricing strategies. So all that said, these tariffs are definitely going to shake things up in the industry, cause companies to rethink their business plans, but also while it may pose some challenges, in the short term, it may ultimately contribute to a more resilient and domestically focused sector. As one industry veteran put it, canna entrepreneurs have always operated under challenging and changing conditions. This is just one more adaptation that we'll have to make. Now, those tariffs are definitely something that we're going to keep tabs on as we move forward. But something that we're also going to keep tabs on is what's happening from state to state when it comes to the laws and also the taxes, because it seems that flour is about to get even more expensive. So check this video out because you might want to find out more, and it's coming up right now.